the experimental thing's never been that interesting to me. I think, you know, since the beginning, what interested me was to find appropriate ways of dealing with the experience that we were having as human beings, and to find ways to translate that into performance. And it felt in the 80s, I guess as it feels now, that it was necessary to invent new forms or to change the forms that we were working with in order to approach, you know, the reality that we were experiencing. So for me, the you know, change new things in the work, it's driven by a desire to express or to articulate what's happening in the world. It comes from the world rather than from a desire to be experimental. I don't really care if it's experimental or not. I care if it finds a way to speak. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think in two ways. I mean, I think even in the mainstream now, you see a kind of, you know, there's a borrowing of tactics, if you like, from groups like ours, not just from us, but from many other places as well. So there's that strange sense in which language that was begun by groups like us now is regularly borrowed by people in the mainstream. But I think, you know, more interestingly to me, I think that what we did as a group of people and other groups, it set a kind of example on how it might be possible to work as artists in theatre and performance. So I think what you see after us is, you know, you see a lot of other groups, and you see other people in a way trying to find their own way, but I think in some ways inspired by, or maybe even reacting against what we do. That's also, you know, a good thing. But the example of the work is there, I think, for people, and they see that it's possible to work 27, 28 years together in a kind of collective practice. I think that puts a marker down that other people coming behind do follow or draw from. The tricky thing about theatre, I think, is that it wants something. You know, it often wants a reaction. It needs something from you, and I think that's quite hard to watch often. I find myself often sitting back in my seat as if to say, "Yeah, I don't care." It's hard, I don't do that at the cinema so much. There's something embarrassing about theatre. There are other human beings in front of you, other people sitting next to you. It's kind of awful. But you know, what's amazing is that occasionally, maybe one time in 20 or one time in 100, you go into that very weird space of the theatre and something extraordinary happens. So it's, I think there's a lot of difficulty for me with theatre. I'm always very unsure about it. I often sit there thinking I don't understand what's happening. But just occasionally something really, truly, you know, extraordinary happens in that space. For me, anyway, that's my experience. It's not very often. Well, it came in the context of a commission from Kai in Brussels, and they were working on a season of pieces that were connected to the idea of political speeches. And I proposed to make a piece, and that's what we made, which was a kind of clashing together of many different speeches or voices from speeches. So the text began as a kind of monstrous collage of you know, Thatcher and Reagan and Brezhnev and Khrushchev and Pol Pot and John McCain and Sarah Palin and Hillary Clinton, and it was Angela Merkel. It was a kind of mix of voices that I was grabbing and pushing together and making kind of collisions between them. And the other thing that I started to do a lot was to reverse the meaning of a lot of what was being said. So where people said, you know, friends, this is our time, you know, this is our moment, I was just putting in the word not. So I would say, friends, this is not our time. This is not our moment. So these sort of speeches that were supposedly optimistic and bright and, you know, calling people to arms and to change were becoming extremely negative and depressing. But kind of funny as well, because actually a politician would never say this. We can't win, actually. The things which hold us together are weaker than the things which would drive us apart. And it's like, oh no. So I was playing with the language really, and trying to, I think just trying to understand what these political speeches of all these different kinds, a little bit to get the feel of what they were and to break them a little bit. Because we're sort of, I suppose because we're subjected to that language so much, it was interesting to sort of pick it up and see what one could do with it. You know, what could happen if you played with that way of speaking and being.